المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء أمن يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء أمن يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء أمن يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء. فاتحة. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير صلوات على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. My dear brothers and sisters, we started our discussion yesterday on what it means to be a human. Yesterday was an introductory chapter. Today is the first chapter in the discussion. I am actually thinking about writing it as a book, inshallah, if Allah gives me tawfiq. So you are the first people that I've actually shared the material with. Today's topic, let's do a quick recap and then we'll go on to today's topic. So yesterday we discussed what it means to be a human being. There are three components to understanding of what a human being is. One is the ruh, the other is the jism, the other is the aql. These three components come together and that is what we understand as to be the human being. Okay? The body, the intellect or the mind, and the soul or the spirit, the ruh. Okay? So over the next few nights, we're going to discuss each in turn and we're going to understand what their function and roles are, how the Quran and Ahl Bayt have discussed them, and some of the remedies for some of the diseases that affect them. And then we'll come to a conclusion about what it really genuinely means to be a decent human being. And then we're going to look at two examples in particular. And those examples are the example of Amir al-Mu'mineen, Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. And also the example of Sayyid al-Shuhada, Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. And especially Imam Hussein, the way he embodied, the way he controlled, the way he showed us how the jism and the aql and the ruh submits to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay? We don't do these gatherings lightly. Why is it that we don't have such large gatherings for any of the other imams? For any of the other prophets? Why Imam Hussein? We will address this, but why Imam Hussein? Because he embodied everything. He devoted everything. And I say this, and I don't say this lightly, there is no one in the history, nobody in the history of mankind who has sacrificed or who has got to a state that the Holy Imam did on the day of Ashura. No human being. No one sacrificed as much as he sacrificed. His family, his friends, his body, his desires, everything was sacrificed for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Everything was sacrificed. And the only way he could do that was he was in control of being a human being that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala desires us to be. Okay, so inshallah this is something we'll discuss in the last few lectures. The next few are introductory, so we understand the topic. We understand the different areas. So the jism. In the society that we live in, the jism, the body, is considered to be me. My hair, my beard, my nose, my looks, my Instagram, my TikTok videos. Yeah? That's us. That's me. Less so my words, more so how I look, how I feel, what I did, how I dressed, what I drove. But it's about me. It's about the body. And we say, that is us. That is me. That is Faisal. That is Muhammad. That's Ali. It's what we look like. And as we're going to show today, it is based on the most weakest of understandings. As I said yesterday, to discuss this, you need a proper framework. When you sit down with an alim and say, okay, I want to discuss this topic, I believe this, I have this feeling, I have this emotion, I think this. The alim says, oh, calm down, calm down. What is the framework? What are we discussing here? Okay, so we need to get the framework. The framework is, there are three parts to us. There is the body, there is the intellect, and there's the ruh. Okay, so which part of that do you want to discuss? Let's start off with the body, and let's discuss where the body comes from, how it's born, okay, how it grows, and how it develops. Salawatu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. The Holy Quran invites us in a number of surahs and number of ayahs to study creation, to study the physical world. وَفِي خَلْقِكُمْ وَمَا يُبَثُّ مِنْ دَعْبَةٍ آيَاتٌ لِقَوْمٍ يُوقِنُونَ. And in your creation and of the beasts, of the animals that are out there, that are scattered all over the earth, is ayat, are the signs, لِقَوْمٍ يُوقِنُونَ, for those that think, that believe. So the invitation of the Quran 1400 years ago was study what? Study your creation, study the creation of animals. And when you study those, you'll appreciate Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now I apologize in advance. It's a little bit sensitive. I've thought about it long and hard. Hopefully I'll deliver in a way that it won't offend anyone. But these are the verses of the Quran. I will try to do it as subtly as possible without offending anyone. The process of creation starts when two cells are brought together in the mother's womb. Two cells. When those two cells unite, okay, the process of creation, this is how it starts. When those two cells unite, they can't be observed with the eyes. They can barely be observed with a microscope. That's how small and tiny they are. But they contain enough information to say, this is what the human being is going. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Those tiny, I'm doing this, it's not even like, it's not even small, it's much, much smaller. But when they unite, when they come together, that is when the process of the creation of the body starts. They then split into 200 odd cells. So these two come together, they then start splitting and splitting. As I said, I'm doing this, they are much, much smaller, right? They start splitting and they start splitting. And 200 cells emerge. Each cell has enough information in it to say, I'm going to be the hand, and for me to become the hand, I have this, I need to go through this process of creation. Right? This process of creation. I'm going to be the eyes, and this particular eye is going to be a brown eye, and I need to go with this process of creation. There is programming in each of these tiny cells, which started from these two cells uniting, which are smaller than what I'm trying to point out to you. The process of creation started from that. But each cell had that information in them to form the human body. And there, layers upon layers of skin and is formed. Okay? For those of you who are studying biology, especially at the high school, you'll discuss this. Yeah, you'll discuss how the body evolves. Okay? Layers and layers are formed. But there's one thing missing at this stage. Still in the mother's womb. One thing is missing. There's no haraka. There's no movement. And this is when the body is united with the what? The ruh. The moment the ruh enters the body. Now I say enter. The moment the ruh enters the body, all of a sudden there is movement. Allahu Akbar. There is movement. So this is the first point. So of the three things we said, the intellect, the ruh, and the jism. What are the first two things that come together? The ruh and the jism. Intellect is nowhere to be seen. Intellect is nowhere to be seen. This is a very important point. Very, very important point. The two first things that unite are the ruh and the jism. And haraka. Movement starts. The body then starts to move on its own. It's now formed. These 200 cells have now formed over time. Salawatu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Surah Sajda The ayahs are from 7 to 9. Please, if you've got a chance, go home, read these surahs, these ayahs, and they are beautiful, beautiful. الذي أحسن كل شيء خلقه وبدأ خلق الإنسان من طين ثم جعل نسله من سلالة من ماء مهين ثم سواه ونفخه فيه من روحي وجعل لكم سمع والأبصار والأفئدة قليلا ما تشكرون وقالوا أئذا ضللنا في الأرض إن لفي خلق جديد بل هم بلقاء ربهم كافرون. Who then has made all things good which he created? And he began creation from a speck of clay, from clay. Then he made his seed from a droplet. Then he fashioned in him, and then وَنَفَخَ فِيهِ مِنْ ruh, and then he breathed into him his spirit. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes that ruh and says, it's from me. The jism, no, the ruh from me. And we'll come on to this in the next few nights. We'll come on to this, why the ruh is so important, and what we need to do to nurture the ruh. Okay? We'll come on to this. Okay? And then, وَجَعَلَ لَكُمْ سَمْعًا وَالْأَبْصَارَ, and he pointed for you hearing and sight. وَالْأَفْئِدَةَ قَلِيلًا مَا تَشْكُرُونَ, and small thanks you give. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, once the ruh enters, certain things happen. Okay, as I said, my time flies by. This is why I hate having watches in front of me. But I made a promise I will be off, inshallah, on time. Okay, inshallah. So, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is ayah number 9 of Surah Sajda, which is surah number 32. Okay, so the youngsters, go home, get the Quran, look at the translation, and if you can't understand it yourself, ask your parents to read it to you. Okay, ayahs, which ones? 7 to 10. Okay, ayah 7 to 10, Surah Sajda. We're going to focus in on ayah number 9. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, once the ruh has entered, وَجَعَلَ لَكُمْ سَمْعًا, and then we've appointed for you, or then you start to hear, sama, wal-absara, and sight, wal-af'ida. Okay. The Quran lays out a certain order, and it doesn't do it lightly. So the first thing you do, now that the ruh has entered, is hear, and then you see. At what point do we start hearing? And at what point do we start seeing? Okay, when does the sight start, and when does the hearing start? Okay, Quran does not use words lightly and doesn't put them in a certain order without a reason. You're listening, you're hearing. This is me and you. Our hearing started in our mother's wombs. Allahu Akbar. Our sight started when? When we are born. This is why, what's the first thing when a child is born? What is the first thing we all insist on quickly? Azan and Aqama. The first senses that are active are the ears. Quickly, before anything else enters that, even though in the mother's womb, that information is, that listening process is already started. Get the Azan, get the Aqama. This is why a lot people insist, as soon as it's born, find someone go and recite the father. If the father can't do it, get the grandfather. If the grandfather, get someone elder, someone pious to come and recite the Azan and the Iqamah. This is why, because that's the first sense. The eye is still not functioning properly. The smell is now beginning to function. Okay? Do you remember the story of Hussein Tabatabai? No? Any of my elders? Hussein Tabatabai, when I was growing up, came from Iran. He was a young boy, about 5 or 6 years old. By that age, he'd memorized the Quran. You mentioned any ayah after Quran. His clips are still on YouTube. If anyone wants to. Hussein Tabatabai, right? It's about 20-25 years ago, right? Hussein Tabatabai. And I remember we followed him around. Everywhere we went, we'd go, let's see this miracle boy who at the age of 5, he couldn't read or write, by the way. At the time, he could not read or write. Somehow or another, he'd memorized the Quran. You gave him one verse, at the beginning of the ayah, he would finish the ayah for you. You'd give him a reference, he'd give you the reference, right? It's still on YouTube. Someone pointed out the other day that clips of Hussein Tabatabai still exist. Someone asked the father, when did it start? How did you know? He said, listen, it started very early. As soon as you could speak, Soon as the words started coming, he was reciting them. He was reciting the verses of the Quran. He said, okay, was it you? He said, no. He said, when his mother was expecting him, she used to, they lived in Qom, she used to go to the mosque for Quran lessons, for hifz. I think both of the mother and the father were the house, but the mother used to go, and she was devout. You could see the nur in their faces. She was devout. She was there in morning and afternoon. So the child within the mother's womb was absorbing all that information. That's the process. Be careful. If any of you are expecting, be careful what is said, what is done in the presence of a woman that is expecting. Culturally we have this, but actually there is religious basis for this as well. Salatu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. I'll pose a question to you. From our whole life, when do you think we learn the most? The greatest learning curve that we have? Childhood. Which years? What's the formative years? Give me some numbers. 2, 3, 4, 5 years? 7 years? 9 years? 10, 12, 15, 16? No? The most formative, and this is throughout your life. Throughout your life, where you learn the most, where the brain learns the most, is from 0 to 12 months. Generally, they say the first 6 months. After that, the learning, so this is how it learns. The learning curve, those who are studying maths, the learning curve starts to flatten out. So I could be in the Hawza for 50 years. I will not learn as much as that child that learns in the first 6 months. What are you learning? You're learning how to use your eyes and your sense. You're learning what is good words and what are bad words. You're learning what is the voice of my mother and what is the voice of my father. You're learning touch. This is hot, this is cold. You're learning how to walk. You're learning this tastes nice, this does not taste nice. That formative years that the brain is taking all that information in is in those years. When do we start emphasizing? Much later on. When do we need to start considering the importance of learning? Is in those formative years. Allah. Most people just ignore the children and just leave them lying, but those are the formative years. That's what science tells us today. Those are the formative years. My time is up. I had at least 3 or 4 other areas I wanted to go. I wanted to go into the digestive system, how beautiful that digestive system, how the food is taken in, how it's processed. For us to process that much food, you need a full factory to turn it from this to that. But it's all done in here, in this tiny space. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is inviting us to say, look at yourselves. Look inside your bodies. Look inside your bodies. Understand what's going on inside you. Now they say to us, this is all the process of evolution. This I need to address, and inshallah tomorrow if we have more time, we'll address it in detail. Okay? They say it's a process of evolution. Okay. We evolved from apes, we evolved from single cells, we evolved from this, we evolved from that. So are you telling me those 2 cells that came together, where did they get the information from to create this walking, talking human being that is so complex, that has, when the brain starts picking up information, how many receptor cells do you think it has to process? How many receptor cells do you think we have around our body? 100,000? 1 million? 100 million receptor cells are sending information back to the brain all of the time. Allahu Akbar. 100 million receptors, little things are saying, I'm feeling cold, I'm feeling this. The brain is processing all of that information. There's no big data center somewhere. This thing is processing all that information. It's like, oh, is it relevant? It's not relevant. It's important? It's not important. But we ignore that. And we ignore it to our peril. Why? We ignore it because we think, no, later on in life it's the aql, the intellect. But we ignore what the body is doing in the background. So I said, what did I say? Which ayahs? Surah number? 32. Surah number 32. Ayah numbers? Which ayahs? 7. Good. Okay. I want these studied. The other thing I want to do, and this is quite amusing, and this is, you can have a bit of fun with your with the family, is I want you to try to move your middle toe. Middle toe in your feet. It won't happen. It won't happen. No, it won't. Do it. Middle toe. You will not be able. No, not with your fingers. Try to move it with your brain. Send the instructions. Say move. You won't be able to do it. Just the middle toe. Not moving anything. Just try to move. That shows to you you're not in full control of your own body. Allah. You're not in control of your own body. No, this is who I am. Baba, move your middle toe. Move your middle toe. No, I can't. I can move the first one, I can move the second one, I can move all together. I can't move the single one by itself. But you're in control, it's yours. No, I can't. We lose touch. We lose touch with the reception with our body. There's a consequence for that. There's a consequence for that. And the consequence is actually when it comes to your salah. If I have time, my time is up for today. But inshallah, if someone reminds me, we will touch on it later on in the series. Your salah, a lot of people focus on the intellect, focus on your body. If you focus on your body, your salah will change dramatically. Salatu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. When I came, I thought I was struggling for material. I haven't touched anything. I really haven't. So inshallah, over the next few nights. So you know the topic now. So it's jism, then it will be aql, and then it will be the ruh, and then we'll try to bring it all together. We'll touch on a little bit about salah, and then we'll look at the holy personality of Imam Hussein. If we have time, we'll touch on the personality of Amir al-Mu'mineen, inshallah. Let me take you to the plains of Karbala. No, let me take you to Medina. Muawiyah has passed away, has died, Maloon. The pressure is on Imam Hussein from all directions. Imam Hussein, fearing what was going to happen. What did Yazid do to Medina? Do you know what Yazid did after the events of Karbala? We know. He burnt Medina. The women of Medina were raped. Okay, these are historical facts. It's not Faisal Shia making it up. These are historical facts recorded in the Sunni. The women of Medina were raped. The horses were tied in the mosque of the Holy Prophet next to his graves. Okay, this is Medina. Fearing what was going to the events of Karbala happening in Medina, the Holy Prophet decided, no, this is not the place for this to happen. And he took his family and he left Medina. Now, what was the leaving of Medina? Allahu Akbar. Mullah Hussein had always been in, he left Kufa when Amir al-Mu'mineen was there, but he always returned to Medina. Mullah Hussein had a certain attachment to Medina. There was a certain attachment to who? To the grave of Sayyidah Fatima. Mother and son, there is some connection between these two that is so unique and so special. It said that Sayyidah Fatima, the day she would be crying and she'd be sewing the clothes of Hussein, even when he was a young child. So on the plains of Karbala, this will be the last kurta that he will wear. Can you imagine a young boy, he was 4 years old. She's preparing for his death then, before she goes. Allahu Akbar. That's the bond he had. Can you imagine what went through Mullah Hussein for leaving Medina at that point? And leaving Medina, the grave of his mother, the grave of his brother Hassan, who had the arrows put through his body when they went to bury him. And then the grave of his grandfather, Jad Hussein, Jad Rasulullah. When Mullah Hussein came to the grave of the Prophet, he said he fell asleep on the grave of the Rasulullah. He saw his grandfather in his dream. He said, "Oh Hussein, start preparing. For the time has come for you to make the sacrifice. For you to sacrifice what we made, the promise that we made to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This religion will only survive with your blood and the blood of Ali Akbar and the blood of Ali Asgar and the arms of Abbas and the chadar of Zainab. O Hussein, make the preparations. Prepare your caravan of doom and leave Medina and start your journey towards the land of Karb and Bala. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Allah.